The scream shattered the silence like glass, breaking in an endless void. Emily Carter froze, her breath caught in her throat, heart pounding against her ribs. She whispered, "Who's there?" but no reply came. The old house exhaled with a groan, its walls bending like bones under a heavy weight. Shadows thickened at the corners, stretching unnaturally, reaching toward her as if alive. Dust swirled through the narrow beam of moonlight that pierced a broken window. Emily's chest tightened. She swore she felt a whisper at her ear, though the air was still. She stumbled backward, her shoes scraping the warped floorboards. The hall stretched longer than it should, endless and suffocating. A cold dread seeped into her skin, numbing her fingers. The air carried a faint scent of iron, sharp and raw, as though blood lingered unseen. A faint voice hissed her name. Emily, she turned, but the hallway behind her was empty, and the scream still echoed inside her skull. Emily leaned against the wall, chest heaving. She whispered, "It sounded like her. It sounded like Clara." The sound of her childhood friend's voice pressed against her memory, pulling at wounds she buried long ago. The silence mocked her. Her reflection in a cracked mirror trembled, as if the glass rippled with breath. The shadows behind her stretched farther, bleeding into the reflection, taking forms her mind refused to name. The air turned damp, a rotten stench rising from the boards beneath her. Emily pressed her hands to her face, skin clammy, heart begging her to run. But her legs refused. A faint giggle echoed through the house, sharp and hollow, a child's laughter where no child lived. Her body locked in place. She whispered, "Clara, are you here?" But the mirror cracked with a sound like bone breaking, and silence smothered the air again. Emily forced herself forward into the narrow corridor. The wooden floor sagged under each step. The scent of mildew clawed at her lungs. She whispered, "I shouldn't have come back." A photograph clung to the wall, damp and peeling, showing her family standing outside this very house decades ago. She reached out, her fingers brushing its water-damaged surface, and the faces in the photo seemed to blur. Her younger self stared back with hollow eyes. Emily gasped and stumbled away, the picture frame crashing to the ground, glass shattering across her shoes. Behind the noise, a faint heartbeat pulsed through the house, low and rhythmic. Each thump shook her bones, echoing like a drum buried in her chest. Her throat tightened. She whispered, "Why does it feel alive?" The heartbeat grew louder until she covered her ears, but it came from within the walls. Jonathan Reed stepped into the hallway, his flashlight cutting across the warped walls. "Emily, calm down," he said, his tone sharp, dismissive. Emily's voice cracked. "You heard it too. Don't lie to me." Jonathan shook his head, frowning. "Old houses creak. The mind plays tricks. You've been here too long, Dodge." The beam of his flashlight caught the shattered photograph, its cracked glass reflecting a warped grin that wasn't in the picture before. Emily clutched her arms tightly, her breath uneven. "She called my name," Emily whispered. Jonathan sighed and rubbed his forehead. "It's stress, nothing more." But his hands trembled against the flashlight, betraying his words. He refused to meet her eyes as the shadows thickened around them. His voice lowered. "Don't give it power. That's how it spreads." The air dropped colder, sharp as ice in their lungs. Emily staggered forward, eyes fixed on a figure at the end of the hall. Clara Hayes stood there, pale and silent, her dress tattered and soaked as though pulled from water. Emily whispered, "Clara." The figure tilted her head slowly, eyes hollow voids. Her lips parted, and water dripped onto the boards below her, pooling into black stains. Jonathan raised his flashlight, but the beam fractured against her form, bending as though light refused to touch her. Emily's heart thundered. Clara lifted a hand, reaching out, her fingers trembling with desperation. Emily's voice cracked. "I thought you were gone." A sudden gust tore through the hall, rattling the walls, and Clara's mouth opened wide in a silent scream before she vanished into shadow. Emily trailed her hand along the damp wall until her fingers caught a carved groove. She leaned closer, heart racing, and whispered, What is this? Strange symbols covered the wood, etched deep and uneven. The carvings felt alive, vibrating faintly under her touch. Jonathan lifted his flashlight, sweeping it across the markings with a skeptical frown. Graffiti, old scratches, he muttered, though his voice wavered. Emily shook her head, pulling back her trembling hand. They burn cold. It feels wrong. The house seemed to hum around them, as though the symbols had stirred something awake. The hallway groaned and a whisper slipped between the cracks, echoing both their names. Jonathan steadied himself and said firmly, "Do not listen, it's the mind playing games." But Emily's chest tightened, her pulse quickening, as if the wood itself was breathing beneath her palm. Emily's footsteps faltered as she caught sight of a mirror resting crookedly at the end of the hall. Its surface rippled like water, reflecting not her form but twisted shadows moving freely. She whispered, "It's not me." Jonathan stepped closer, shaking his head. "Refraction. Old glass warps," he insisted. But the reflection smiled, though Emily's lips stayed shut. Her stomach dropped. The figure in the mirror raised a hand, claw-like and trembling, reaching toward her. Emily staggered back, pulse pounding in her temples. Jonathan swung his flashlight at the mirror, but the light fractured, splitting into sharp beams. A chill swept through the hall as the reflected Emily whispered something inaudible, her mouth opening wider until the sound scratched like glass against stone. Emily gasped, clutching her chest, and the mirror stilled, returning only her pale reflection. Jonathan paced the hall, running his hand through his hair, voice sharp. "Emily, you're exhausted. You're seeing what you want to see." His flashlight trembled as he forced a calm tone. Emily's voice cracked. "You saw it too. Don't pretend." Jonathan shook his head quickly, eyes darting away from hers. "Stress, trauma. Your mind wants ghosts, so it makes them." Emily felt her breath tighten, the cold seeping deeper into her skin. "Clara's here. I know it." Jonathan's jaw clenched. "No," he snapped. His voice softened as he looked at her pale face. "You can't afford to believe that. If you do, it wins." Emily stepped back, shivering, pressing herself against the wall. Jonathan lowered his flashlight. "Fight your mind, not shadows." But behind him, the shadows stretched taller, forming shapes he refused to see. The air shifted, heavy and still. A voice, calm yet hollow, slid into the silence. "You shouldn't have returned." Emily turned sharply, eyes meeting a tall figure cloaked in shadow. Elias Ward stepped forward, his face half hidden beneath the hood of a dark coat. Emily whispered, "Who are you?" His pale eyes studied her, unwavering. "One who remembers," Elias replied. Jonathan raised his flashlight, but Elias did not flinch. Instead, his words dropped like stone. "The curse feeds on your disbelief. The more you deny, the stronger it grows." Jonathan scoffed, muttering, "Another lunatic." Elias tilted his head, expression unreadable. "Your bloodline bound this place. You can't undo what was promised." Emily's heart clenched, fear sharp as a blade. She stammered, "What do you mean bound?" But Elias stepped back into the shadow, fading until only his voice lingered. "The house remembers." That night, Emily drifted into shallow sleep, her body heavy with dread. She opened her eyes and found herself lying on the same hallway floor, but everything was wrong. The walls bled with dark stains, and whispers poured through the cracks. Clara stood at the far end, her soaked dress clinging, eyes voids of black. Emily whispered, "I'm dreaming," but her breath fogged, cold as reality. Clara's mouth moved silently, her hands clawing at her throat as if drowning again. Emily crawled toward her, tears streaming. Jonathan's voice snapped her awake, his hand gripping her arm. "You were screaming," he said, panicked. She gasped for air, her body shaking. Emily whispered, "It doesn't end, even in dreams." Jonathan looked away, the fear in his eyes betraying his silence. The scream tore through the house like a blade ripping fabric. Emily clutched her head, eyes darting wildly. "It's her again," she gasped. Jonathan swung his flashlight toward the sound, but the beam bent as though swallowed by the dark. The hallway lights flickered once, then went dead, leaving them in suffocating shadow. The scream came again, closer this time, filling the air with a piercing wail that rattled their bones. Emily stumbled, pressing her back against the wall. "Clara!" she cried, voice breaking. Jonathan grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. "Don't answer it. It's not real." But the voice shifted, deeper now, fractured with malice, repeating Emily's name in a guttural tone. Emily's breath came in shallow gasps as the sound clawed at her ears. She whispered, "It knows me," and her knees buckled beneath her. Emily stumbled into a side room, chest heaving. The air was thick with mildew, and broken furniture lay scattered. On the wall, a hidden panel had been pried open, revealing a small wooden box. Emily's hands shook as she lifted it, the wood blackened by time. She whispered, "This is ours. This was hidden." Jonathan frowned. "Just junk." But as Emily opened the box, brittle pages slipped free, fragments of a diary, the handwriting familiar. Her breath caught. "It's my mother's," she said. The words spoke of a pact, a binding curse passed down the Carter bloodline. Emily's throat tightened, tears stinging her eyes. "She knew," Emily whispered. Jonathan muttered, "It's madness." But the diary bled dark stains onto Emily's fingers, as if alive, and a heartbeat pulsed from the wood. Jonathan grabbed the diary from Emily's hands, tossing it aside. "Enough! This is delusion," he shouted, his voice cracking. Emily gasped. "You saw the stains, the words. Why are you lying to yourself?" Jonathan's face twisted, jaw tight, eyes wild. "You're letting this place win. I won't let it take me too." Emily flinched, tears streaking her face. "It already has you," she whispered. Jonathan shoved past her, pacing with frantic steps, his hands tugging at his hair. "No curse, no pact, just a rotting house and your guilty mind." Emily stepped back, her breath shallow, staring at him in disbelief. Jonathan avoided her gaze, muttering under his breath as shadows grew taller around him. For the first time, Emily saw fear leak through his stubborn denial. From the shadows, Elias Ward's voice emerged steady. "You've begun to see." Emily spun to face him as he stepped forward, his dark coat brushing the warped floorboards. His pale eyes fixed on the diary pages scattered like bones. "The curse was not born here. It was bound here, tied to your name." Emily swallowed hard. "What does it want?" Elias tilted his head, tone grave. "It feeds on denial, on those who refuse to believe. It eats the rational mind first." Jonathan scoffed, but his voice trembled. "Lies." Elias's expression remained still, unflinching. "It is hunger without end." Emily whispered, "How do we stop it?" Elias's lips curved slightly, not a smile but a warning. "The curse never ends. It only trades hands." The silence after his words pressed like a weight on her chest. The room chilled suddenly, and water dripped from the ceiling in steady beats. Emily looked up and gasped as Clara Hayes appeared, standing barefoot in the corner. Her soaked dress clung to her thin frame, her hair plastered against her face. Clara's hollow eyes locked onto Emily, filled with pain and pleading. Emily whispered, "Clara." Clara's lips parted, no words emerging, only a bubbling gasp as if she were still drowning. She raised her trembling hands toward Emily, desperate. Jonathan staggered back, muttering, "This isn't possible." Elias watched in silence, eyes narrowing. Clara's figure flickered, breaking like a damaged film reel, her body shaking violently. Emily reached out a hand. "I'll help you." But Clara's scream tore through the air, a soundless agony that split the room into silence, and her form vanished. Emily sat on the splintered floor, clutching her head as whispers circled her mind like vultures. Her chest rose and fell in sharp bursts, every breath jagged. "I can't trust myself anymore," she whispered, voice trembling. Jonathan knelt nearby, his face tense, forcing reason into his words. "It's the house, Emily, not you." But even he avoided her eyes. Elias stood at the doorway, silent, watching her unravel. The walls pulsed faintly, as though the wood had veins beneath its peeling paint. Emily pressed her hands against her ears, but the whispers sank deeper, curling inside her skull. "They know me," she gasped, tears streaking her cheeks. Jonathan gripped her shoulder, shaking her. "You're stronger than this." Emily's hands trembled. "No, I'm breaking." Her reflection in a broken shard of glass smirked back at her, mocking the fear in her eyes. Emily stumbled to her feet, her hand grazing the wall. Beneath the layers of torn wallpaper, she felt sharp ridges. She clawed at the paper, ripping it back in frantic jerks. Symbols, carved deep into the wood, stretched in long spirals across the room. They pulsed faintly, glowing like embers in dying fire. Jonathan stepped back, his voice low. "This isn't possible." Emily's chest heaved as she traced one with shaking fingers. "They're older than the house," she whispered. Elias's voice cut through the silence. "This place was built around them. It was never meant to be a home. It was meant to be a cage." Emily's breath caught, her eyes wide. "A cage for what?" Elias stared at the wall, his lips tightening. "For what you carry." The air thickened, pressing against their lungs, and the symbols burned brighter. Jonathan snapped suddenly, slamming his flashlight against the wall. "Enough!" he roared, the beam sputtering. Emily jumped back, startled. "Jonathan, stop!" His voice broke, raw. "You let this house crawl into your veins, and now it's in mine. I won't believe this madness." He pounded his fist against the wood, splintering it. Emily's eyes welled with tears. "You're making it stronger," she whispered. Jonathan turned on her, face red, trembling with rage and fear. "You're the reason we're trapped here. You brought us into this nightmare." Elias stood silent, shadows swirling closer behind Jonathan. Emily shook her head, stepping toward him cautiously. "It's already inside you." Jonathan staggered, clutching his head, his body shaking violently. His eyes flickered with panic. The shadows lengthened, curling like tendrils around his frame. Elias finally broke his silence, his voice carrying weight. "The house does not demand belief, it demands sacrifice." Emily froze, her body tense. "What does that mean?" Elias's eyes glinted faintly. "The curse cannot be starved. It feeds until someone offers blood to end the cycle." Jonathan barked a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "And you expect us to believe you?" Elias stepped forward, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the floor. "Your family bound it, Emily. Your blood ties it still." Emily staggered back, clutching her stomach as though the words had struck her. Jonathan snarled, "Don't listen to him." But Elias's tone grew sharper. "Without sacrifice, it consumes all within its walls. It chooses who to keep and who to bury." Emily whispered, voice cracking, "And if I refuse?" Elias's pale lips curved. "Then you never leave." The temperature dropped, frost crawling along the floorboards in jagged veins. Emily's breath fogged as her eyes widened. A shape stirred in the corner, blacker than the shadows, its edges twisting like smoke made solid. The figure lurched forward, limbs bending wrong, its face hidden in a blur of shifting darkness. Emily choked on her words. "It's here." Jonathan raised his flashlight, but the beam fractured and died. His voice cracked. "What is that?" Elias's voice was calm but grim. "The thing you caged. The thing you carry." The creature's form pulsed, the air vibrating with its growl, a sound too low and deep to belong to anything human. Emily stumbled backward, her legs shaking. Jonathan clutched her arm, whispering, "We have to run." But the shadows sealed the doorway shut, leaving them trapped in the same room as the horror revealed. Emily knelt beside the broken diary pages, her hands trembling as she spread them across the floor. The ink had bled into black stains, but the words were clear, "Blood binds us forever chained." Her throat tightened as she whispered, "It was them. My family did this." Jonathan shook his head violently, pacing in denial. "No, this is superstition, Emily. Your mind is twisting it. Elias stepped forward, his voice flat. The Carters traded safety for survival. They promised the house lives in exchange for freedom. Emily clutched her chest, her heart pounding. My mother knew. Jonathan slammed his fist into the wall. Enough. You're letting lies tear you apart. But Emily's body trembled, her eyes burning with tears. It's not lies, she whispered. It's our curse. The house groaned in agreement, the walls pulsing like a heartbeat. Emily's eyes widened as a name appeared again and again in the diary: Clara Hayes. Her voice broke. She was part of it. She wasn't just a victim. The shadows thickened, and Clara emerged, her soaked form flickering like broken glass. Her lips quivered, water spilling from her mouth as she whispered, I was offered. Emily staggered back, her heart splitting. No. Jonathan's face blanched. That's impossible. She was your friend. Clara's hollow gaze fixed on Emily, pain etched in every movement. Blood chose me. Elias's voice cut sharply. The first sacrifice binds the bloodline forever. She was theirs, and by her loss, the house was sealed. Emily dropped to her knees, tears soaking her hands. Clara, I never knew. Clara's form flickered again, her scream silent but piercing, before vanishing into mist. Jonathan stepped forward, his voice breaking. She wasn't chosen by chance. Emily stared at him, frozen. What do you mean? Jonathan's eyes darted, his face pale. Your family asked me years ago to study this place, to prove it was harmless. Emily's body went rigid, her voice trembling. You knew? Jonathan's hands shook as he pointed at the diary. I thought if I denied it, it would die. I told them it was safe. I told them you wouldn't be touched. Emily's tears burned hot down her face. You betrayed me, she whispered. Jonathan's voice cracked, desperate. I thought I could protect you. Shadows crawled higher along the walls, feeding on his confession. Elias's voice cut cold. Your denial fed the curse more than belief ever could. Emily's scream echoed, raw with grief and rage. Emily's chest heaved as she pressed her hands to the diary, her voice raw. The curse is in us, not just in this house. Elias nodded slowly, his tone grave. It is your inheritance. You can never cast it away. The bloodline itself is the prison. Jonathan muttered bitterly. Then there's no escape. Elias's pale eyes flickered. There is always escape, but it demands a cost. Emily shivered, tears trembling at her lashes. Cost of blood. Elias tilted his head, silent confirmation. The house creaked as though listening, the air pressing heavier around them. Emily whispered, it was never Clara's fault. It was mine to carry. Jonathan shook his head, panicked. No, don't take this on. We'll find another way. But Emily's expression hardened, haunted by truth. There was never another way. The walls closed in, the floorboards cracking as if the house itself inhaled. Emily rose slowly, her figure trembling but steady. I can't escape. It wants me. Jonathan lunged toward her, grabbing her arm. No, I won't let it take you. Emily's eyes glistened with tears, her voice soft. You already did. She pulled free, stepping into the center of the room as the shadows coiled upward, wrapping around her. The house shook violently, plaster raining down like ash. Elias whispered, It accepts. Jonathan screamed her name, his voice swallowed by the roar. Emily lifted her face, her eyes reflecting endless black. I was always its heir. The shadows devoured her form, and the room fell silent. Jonathan collapsed, hands shaking. Elias's expression remained cold. The curse continues. The house shuddered as Emily stepped deeper into the central chamber, walls bending in unnatural angles. Dust swirled around her like living mist. Every heartbeat throbbed painfully in her ears. It won't let me leave, she whispered. Shadows twisted along the walls, forming grotesque shapes, reaching toward her. Jonathan followed cautiously, flashlight trembling in hand. Emily, wait, don't provoke it, he warned. Emily shook her head, voice steady despite terror. It already knows I'm here. I have to face it. Elias's pale eyes scanned the room, his voice calm but ominous. The moment of confrontation is upon you. Nothing hides anymore. The floor groaned beneath them, and the shadows seemed to lean in, waiting for her first move. Her breath misted in the cold air, every instinct screaming to flee. Emily froze as the shadows coalesced into a shape taller than any human, its form writhing unnaturally. A low, guttural growl vibrated the air. "I know you," Emily whispered, voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, edges flickering like smoke. Jonathan raised his flashlight, but the beam bent, failing to illuminate it. "Step back," he yelled, panic in his voice. Elias's expression remained unreadable. "It feeds on fear and hesitation. Do not falter." Emily clenched her fists, eyes narrowing. "I am not afraid of you," she said, though her teeth chattered. The creature lunged forward, faster than thought, and the walls groaned in unison. Dust and shadow coiled around Emily like serpents. She braced herself for the first real clash. The first strike hit like ice. Emily stumbled, but regained footing, heart hammering in rhythm with the wall's groan. "I won't let it control me," she shouted. Jonathan tried to intercept, but shadows lashed at him, and he barely dodged. Elias stepped forward, voice commanding. "Emily, focus. You are stronger than it knows." Emily's vision blurred as the creature shrieked silently, edges flickering like burning smoke. She lunged, throwing herself at it, hands braced against the writhing darkness. The shadow recoiled slightly, tendrils snapping back. Her chest heaved, every fiber of her being screamed with effort. "It's mine to face," she whispered. Jonathan stumbled closer, eyes wide, and Elias's hands raised, guiding her energy. The chamber seemed alive, bending and breathing with the struggle. Emily gritted her teeth as the shadow retreated momentarily, hissing in fury. The floorboards cracked beneath their weight. Jonathan panted, flashlight flickering across walls that seemed to pulse like flesh. "I can't hold it much longer," he shouted. Emily shook her head, eyes blazing. "We hold together, or we fall." Elias's pale gaze swept across the room. "Use the knowledge. The house remembers every motion, every fear. Fight its memory, not just its form." Emily reached for a fragment of the diary, still clutched in her coat pocket. She ripped a page and pressed it toward the shadow, words glowing faintly. The darkness recoiled, screeching, as if the writing burned it. Jonathan's jaw dropped, awe mingling with terror. Emily whispered, voice raw but resolute, "This ends now." The shadow shrieked and writhed, shrinking against the diary's glow. Emily's hands shook, but she pressed harder, voice firm. "You cannot consume me." Tendrils recoiled violently, scraping the walls and ceiling. Jonathan grabbed her shoulder. "Keep going." Emily's gaze met Elias's. "No," he nodded, expression grim. She hurled the page at the center of the shadow. It flared bright for a moment, then imploded, leaving a ringing silence. Emily sank to her knees, trembling, chest heaving. Jonathan crouched beside her, breathing hard, eyes wide. The chamber's temperature slowly normalized, though faint shadows lingered at the corners. Elias's voice broke the silence. "The moment is won, but the curse remains. It watches. It waits." Emily whispered, exhausted but alive. "I've faced it, for now." Emily stumbled out of the chamber, trembling, chest heaving with shallow breaths. The house was silent, yet every creak of the floorboards sounded deafening. Dust floated in shafts of cold moonlight. "It's over, isn't it?" she whispered. Jonathan trailed beside her, flashlight weak in hand, voice tight with lingering panic. "I think we survived." Elias remained a few steps behind, his hooded gaze fixed on the walls. "Survived, yes, but the curse endures. It watches." Emily's stomach clenched, fear flickering through her relief. Shadows lingered in corners, motionless but sentient. Her eyes scanned the rooms she had fought through. Nothing moved, yet the air pressed against her chest, heavy, almost sentient. She whispered to herself, voice breaking, "It's still here." Emily sank onto a broken chair, knees shaking, hands pressed over her face. Jonathan crouched beside her, voice low. "You did it. You survived everything." She shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "I faced it, yes, but at what cost?" Elias stepped closer, his pale eyes reflective in the flickering candlelight. "The house keeps its memories alive. You cannot erase what it has stored. It will linger." Emily shivered. "So, we are always bound." Jonathan glanced at Elias, fear hidden behind his words. "I don't think it's over, not really," Emily whispered into the silence. "Then we live with it." Shadows at the corners shifted faintly, motionless yet threatening. The house exhaled, heavy with its ancient presence. Emily rose slowly, hands still shaking, eyes scanning the corridor. "It's silent now, but I feel it," she whispered. Jonathan's flashlight flickered, casting long, distorted shadows across the walls. "Every step echoes. Every creak feels like it's watching," he admitted, voice tight. Elias remained calm, pale eyes fixed. "Awareness is its mark. It observes your every motion, waiting for doubt." Emily swallowed, heart hammering. "I thought surviving meant freedom." Elias shook his head subtly. "Freedom is temporary. The curse exists beyond death, beyond fear. It waits." She exhaled, trembling but resolute. "Then, we endure it," she murmured. Jonathan's gaze softened, eyes heavy with shared fear. "Together," he whispered, tentative. The house settled around them, silent yet alive. The wind howled through broken windows, rattling the fragile remains of the house. Emily pressed her palm to the wall, feeling its cold textured surface. "It knows every inch of this place," she whispered, voice trembling. Jonathan's jaw tightened. "We survived the impossible. We can survive this too." Elias's tone was steady, but chilling. "Survival here does not grant safety. Awareness is the only shield." Emily clenched her fists, body trembling with residual adrenaline. "Then we remain vigilant," she said, voice firm yet haunted. Shadows shifted faintly in the corners, subtle but alive. The house seemed to breathe in tandem with her pulse, the weight of centuries pressing in. Jonathan swallowed hard, gripping Emily's arm. "We endure it, together." Emily paused at the threshold, staring into the empty darkness beyond the corridor. A faint whisper grazed her ear. "It's not over, Emily." Her stomach clenched, heart racing. Jonathan tensed, eyes scanning the shadows. "Who's there?" he called softly, voice wavering. Only silence answered. Elias's pale gaze rested on her, voice calm but ominous. "The curse sleeps but never dies. It waits." Emily swallowed, voice barely audible. "Then we live with it." Jonathan exhaled shakily. "We keep moving, step by step." Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, still and patient. Emily stepped forward, each footfall echoing in the cold, silent house. The past lingered, the horror survived, and the curse remained.